this example, I am adding numbers after taking input from users. So if I execute it using F8, so input box is a function through which we can take input from user. So these are the parameters. The first parameter is prompt, and the second parameter is title. So there are other parameters also, so we will not get into those details right now. So if we press F8, see the prompt appears here, please enter a number, and the title is number 1. So if I enter any number, say 5, and press OK, so this number gets stored in strnum. So input box returns the value which the user has entered in string format as string. So user can enter anything, like he can enter number or text or anything. So we need to do a little validation. We need to check whether the user has entered a proper number or not. So isNumeric is a function which takes an expression as input, anything you can pass, and it returns a boolean value, true or false, based upon whether this expression is a number or not. So if I press F8, so it enters the if body, because this expression has returned true, since strnum was a number. Now the content of strnum will get stored in intnum. Similarly, I will take input for second number. Now suppose if I enter something say hello, this is not a number, so strnum contains hello, and again it will check. I will display a message box, you have entered a wrong input, and it will terminate. So this end function terminates a program. So let me execute it once again using proper input. So if I enter 5, stores in num1, 6, and the number gets stored in num2, and it comes here input box, it says 7, enter, and finally I will display the sum of the 3 numbers. It's 18. Here I have just considered 3 numbers. So if there are 10 numbers, this program will grow very long. So we have to write lots of lines. So is there any other way to do it where we can write a very small program for the same requirement? Let us see. Now I have written the same program using array. So we will see what is an array. So here we have considered 5 inputs from user, and we have iterated through a loop which runs from 1 through 5. So it says please enter a number, and I have concatenated this with int loop, so this becomes number 1. Now again I am entering some numbers, say 10, and it is checking whether the number is, whatever I have entered, whether it's a number or not. Yes, it is a number, and now it is getting stored in int num. So I haven't declared 5 different variables here. So I have used just a single variable which has a subscript, a index, and I have said that I will use the index from 1 to 5. So what is int num? So let me bring up the local window from here, view, local window. So it is hidden here. So the local window displays the value of all the local variables, so variables which are within this procedure. So you can see it has str_num, int num, etc. So now see, int num has a symbol here, so a symbol of plus. So if I click on this, it will show me int num1, int num2, int num3 up till 5. So what this line actually does is that it creates 5 memory locations, and each memory location will be identified by the subscript. So after executing this line, int loop is now 1, int num1 will store str_num. So let us see. So you can see here int num contains the value 10 now. Now if we go ahead, now int sum will hold the sum of all the numbers. Next int loop, I am taking another input. And again, now you can see int num2 will have 3. Similarly, I have entered all the 5 numbers, and now in sum kept on adding all those numbers, and finally it will display the sum of 5 numbers. So this was array in a nutshell. So using array we can do lots of things. In fact, there would be lots of examples where we would be using arrays. Now this procedure does the same, except for the fact that the user will be given 3 chances to enter a particular number. So earlier what was happening was that the program was terminating whenever the user entered a wrong input, but here the user will be given 3 chances. So you could key in this program in your computer and try for it. So this is a part of your assignment. Now let us look into array in details. So I have declared 3 arrays. The first is str_name, which is an index starting from 1 to 5, and in the local window you can see str_name. It has got 5 locations. Similarly, str_address, so I haven't given the lower subscript here, so by default it will be taken as 0. You can see str_address starts from 0 and it goes up to 5. So there are 6 locations here. And there is also something called int roll. This is also an array. I have specified this brackets here. Int roll is a dynamic array. In a dynamic array we can specify the size later on. So once this line gets executed, see what happens to int roll here. Let me execute this line. Now see, int roll now became an array, and it has 6 locations starting from 0 up to 6. So redeem is used to provide the size of a dynamic array. Now if I execute this line, int roll will store 78. No need to execute this line because you can see the value in the local window. Now I am going to change the size of int roll using redeem once again. Now you can see what happens to the content of int roll. So int roll 6 was 78 earlier, but now it becomes 0. So once we change the size of an array using redeem, all the previous contents gets cleared. And for this, now once again I am storing 78 in int roll 6. Now I am using a little different syntax. So I want to say, for instance, let me make it 8. Now I want to change, sorry, it don't allow me, so let it be like this. So if I want to use redeem once again, say for instance I want to change the size, so I can use a keyword called preserve after redeem. So what preserve will do is that it will preserve the previous content of int roll. So now 78 is there in int roll 6, it is not getting cleared. And finally erase will erase that particular array from memory. Now to make things little more apparent to you, let me make it 8. Let me increase the size of this. Let me once again execute it. Int roll 6 contains 78. Now int roll, everything gets cleared because I have changed the dimension of int roll using redeem. Now int roll 6 again contains 78. Now instead of using redeem, I am using redeem preserve. Now see what happens. Size of int roll has increased as I have specified 8, but the previous content is still there. So that is the difference between redeem and redeem preserve. And erase, it clears the array. You can see int roll is empty now. So another important fact that I want to highlight is, so if I execute this, see we get a compile time error, array already dimensioned. So we can use redeem or redeem preserve only with dynamic arrays. And what is a dynamic array? Any array which has been declared in this format where I haven't specified the size of it, it becomes a dynamic array. And another fact that I want to highlight is that you can specify any subscript. It could be a negative number also, from -5 to +5. So basically it will contain 11 locations. And we can ignore this lower subscript. We can simply write something like 5. In this case, the lower subscript will be considered as 0 by default. So it will be 0 to 5. But we can change that behavior by using the compiler directive option base. Here we can change the default lower subscript. The default is 0. We can change it to 1. So whenever we declare an array where we do not specify the lower subscript, here in this case the default will be taken as 1 as you have specified option base 1. But I would recommend that you should not change the default behavior unless it is extremely required. And also remember that you can only specify either 0 or 1. 0 is by default, so there is no meaning of specifying 0, so you can make it 1, but you cannot make it 2, so it will give an error. Now let us see the LBound and UBound function. So if I execute this, see, if I again bring up the local window, see, intnum contains 7 memory locations starting from 1 to 7, but I am trying to access 8, which does not exist, so it will give an error, subscript out of range. So this is a very common error which we often get when we try to access an array subscript which does not exist. Let me comment this out for the time being. So is there any way to know the lower bound and the upper bound of an array? So here we have already specified, but still we can use this LBound function to check the lower bound and the upper bound. So it is helpful in case of dynamic array. So let me bring the immediate window, pressing Ctrl G. So if I execute it, it will give 1 and UBound will give 7. Now here is a very important use of dynamic array. So I have declared a dynamic array here, strpart. So I have used something called the split function. So what does this function do? So it takes a string expression and it breaks up the string using a delimiter. In this case the delimiter is the second parameter, so I have passed semicolon. So it will break up this string using this semicolon into 5 different parts in this case, and it will return an array, and we need to assign the return value to a dynamic array. It's very important, remember, it has to be a dynamic array. You cannot specify here 1 to 5 or 0 to 4, so you cannot specify it here. It has to be a dynamic array. So now let me execute it. So let me show it to you using the local window. Now see, after execution of this line, see what strpart will hold. See, strpart has become an array here, and the subscript starts from 0. So it is very important to note that split function returns a 0 based array, irrespective of what we have declared in option base. Split function will always return a 0 based array. And another important thing is that it has broken up the string into different parts, and notice that this string does not contain semicolon. So it has used semicolon only to delimit the string, and then it ignores the semicolon and stores the various parts in the array. So in a delimiter you can pass anything. Say for instance, if I pass here Sam, and if I go back here, if I drag it back to here, and if I execute it, now if I click on this strpart, so it has broken up strpart into 2 different parts because Sam appears only once. And the interesting thing is that Sam does not form a part of any of these 2 subscript. So it will use the delimiter to break the string, but in the output array this delimiter will not appear. us make it back to semicolon. So it has converted str part into an array, and here I am simply displaying all the values in the immediate window. So before that, let me clear this immediate window. Let me simply press F5, so it will display the following result. Now here is another example of split function. I have got few strings written in this format, and I want to extract the email ID from this. So in all of this string there is a pattern. You can see this text, my email ID is, this gets repeated in every line. So basically we can break this string using this part as a delimiter, and we can extract the email ID. So let us see how you can do it. Now here I have declared a variable RNG which is of type range. So range is again a kind of extended data type, and RNG will become an object. So don't worry, we will look examples of extended data types, class, objects, all of those in later video sessions. Now I am making range point to a particular range in this workbook. So this workbook.worksheet split example. You can see the name of the sheet is split example dot range A1, and note that I am using this set keyword. So whenever you want to make a variable point to a object in Excel object hierarchy, we need to use this set keyword. And set keyword is mostly used with extended data type. In fact, it is used with extended data types. So this is of type range, and I'm making RNG to point to this particular location A1. So RNG points to A1. If I execute it, Shift F8. If we click on this plus symbol, so you can see all the properties of a range object here. So don't get confused with all this. So let me execute it further. So do while rng.value. So rng.value gives the content of range. In this case, it will contain this string. Do while rng.value not equals to blank. So this loop will keep on executing until it encounters a blank. So let us see. Now after execution of this line, so str error email will get broken up into two parts. Now offset is a function of the range object which takes two properties, the row number, the row offset and the column offset. So basically what offset does is that it will jump to a location. Say if I specify row offset as 1, so from this current location it will jump here, and if I specify column offset as 1, it will jump here. In order to make things more transparent to you, if I write something, say selection dot offset 1, 0, row offset is 1, column offset is 0 dot select, and if I select this particular range, and if I execute this selection dot offset 1, 0 dot select. So selection is a range which is selected at this particular point of time. So any range which is selected, you can get it through selection inbuilt object. And if I press enter, now it is selecting the range specified by the object, I mean offset. So if I press enter once again, so now the current selection is B3 to C5, and if I execute it, the selection will change. Similarly, I can specify one row and one column. Now this will be the new range. We can also specify negative value, say for instance -1, so it will go one row up. I can specify -1 and -1 column, so one row up and one one column left. So this is what offset does. So offset will make the current range, it will make the current range point to a different range. We can access a different range with respect to the range which we are specifying here. Now coming back to the program, so RNG is pointing to A1, range A1, and we have also splitted the string into two parts, and str error email 1 contains the email ID. So I will write something RNG dot offset, row offset is 0, I haven't specified anything, and column offset is 1. So from here I want to jump one column to the right. Dot value equals to str error email 1. Now see, set range equals to RNG dot offset 1. Now here range points to A1, so we haven't changed the range, we have simply placed the value of str error email 1 in B1. We haven't changed the range, so range still points to A1, and now I am making range point to A2 using RNG dot offset 1. Now range RNG should point to A2, and this is what RNG contains now. Now if I press F8, again I am splitting the content of that range, and again I am holding the value in str error email 1 and displaying it. So this way the loop executes, and set RNG equals to RNG dot offset 1. Now RNG points to A7, so if I write something called question mark RNG dot address, it will show me A7. So question mark is nothing but print. We can write PRI anti-print RNG dot address, so it is same as question mark. So you can do these things in the immediate window. So don't worry, we will see lots of examples where we use this symbol. And it will terminate since RNG dot value is blank. Here is another example of split function. If I execute it, A contains the following value. Again I am using this set keyword to make RNG point to this particular range. RNG now points to range A1, and the worksheet is split example. So let me go back here. Rather, let me change it to array to range. Let me execute it back. I'm am using something called range.resize, rng.resize. So I am specifying two values here, the row size and the column size. So for the column size I am using this expression UBound A. So UBound A, if I press shift F9, it will return me 3 and plus 1, so 3 plus 1 4. So because A is a zero based array, since split function returns a zero based array, so I have added 1 to it and it has become 4. So rng.resize 1 comma 4. So what I am saying is that resize yourself to 1 row and 4 column. So it will be from A1 to D1 equals to A. I am assigning the output of A to this range, shift F8. So this is the syntax which you need to follow while assigning an array to a range. You need to resize that range, or the range and the array size needs to be the same. So instead of resizing it, I could have specified A1 to D1 here itself. So if I execute it once again, so let me clear this. If I execute it once again, and if I simply write rng equals to A, see, we get this similar output. But what if we specify A1 to C1 here? So let us see that also. If I execute it, now it has given me the 3 values, since the size of rng is from A1 to C1. Now what if we specify A1 to E1? Let me clear this. So we get a hash NA here, because the size of the array is 4 from 0 to 3, and the size of the range is 5 from A1 to E1. So if in the 5th position it has assigned a hash NA. So this is a very important feature of split function, and this is the syntax for assigning an array to a range. So this concludes our today's session. Thanks for listening.